Hello and welcome to the next edition of the HP Discover podcast series. I'm Dana Gardner, Principal Analyst at Inter Arbor Solutions, your host and moderator for this ongoing discussion on big data innovation. Our next case study interview highlights how Rolta AdvizeX in Independence, Ohio, is creating analytics-driven solutions in the healthcare and retail industries. We'll also delve into how the right balance between open source and commercial IT products helps in creating a big data capability, and we'll also explore how converged infrastructure solutions are hastening the path to big data business value. To learn more about how big data can be harnessed for analysis benefits in healthcare and retail, please join me in welcoming our guests. We're here with Dennis Boucher. He's the enterprise architect at Rolta AdvizeX. Welcome, Dennis.
Good afternoon, Dana.
We're also here with Rajan Narayanan. He's a data scientist there at Rolta AdvizeX. Welcome, Rajan.
Good afternoon, Dana. Glad to be here.
Great. Dennis, let's go to you first. What makes big data so beneficial and so impactful, specifically for the healthcare and retail sectors? Why should we be focused there?
What we're finding at Rolta AdvizeX is that our customers in healthcare and retail have always had a lot of data to make business decisions on, but what they're finding now is that what they've always wanted to do is make real-time decisions, but they've never been able to do that. It was too much data, took too long to process. Maybe the best they could do was weekly or maybe monthly information to improve their business. We're finding the most successful healthcare and retail organizations are making real-time decisions based upon the data that's coming in every second to their organizations.
So it's more, faster, deeper, sort of typical for what we think generally, but is there anything specific about, say, healthcare, for example? What are some top trends that are perhaps driving that? How about economic issues?
Yes. So you have the two sides of healthcare, even if it's a not-for-profit organization. Of course, they're looking for better care for their patients. And so you see the research arms of hospitals, you definitely see the research arms of pharmaceutical companies, and even on the payer side, on the insurance companies, there's a lot of research being done into better health care for the patient, both to increase people's health as well as to reduce long-term costs. So you have that side, which is better health for patients. And then on the flip side, of course, which is somewhat related to that, is how to provide new services and new healthcare for customers, which can be very, very expensive. So how can they do that in a cost-effective manner? And so it's either accessing research more cost-effectively or looking at their entire pipeline with big data to reduce the cost in their pipeline, whether it's providing care or creating new drugs for their patients.
Mm-hmm. And then, of course, retail is such a dynamic industry right now, things changing very rapidly. They're probably interested in knowing what's going on as soon as possible, maybe even starting to get proactive in terms of what they can anticipate in order to solve their issues.
Right, and I'd say there's also two sides to retail as well. One is the traditional, how can I replenish my outlets up to date, real time? How can I get product to the shelf before it runs out? And then there's also the traditional side of the cross-sell, upsell, and what am I selling in a shopping cart to try to get the best mix of products within a shopping cart that'll maximize my profitability for each customer. And so those types of decisions customers in retail have been making for the last 30 to 50 years, but now they have even more data to help them with that, not just the typical sales data that they're getting from the registers or from online, but now we can go into social media as well and get sentiment analysis for customers to see what products they're really interested in to help with stocking those shelves, either the virtual shelves or the physical shelves. And then the second side, besides just merchandising and that market basket analysis, is new channels for consumers. what are the new channels? If I'm a traditional brick and mortar retailer, what are the new channels that I want to get into to expand my customer base rather than just the person who can physically walk in, but across many, many channels. And you see there's so many channels now that retailers can sell to. There's, of course, their online store, but it may be some unique channels like in Twitter and Facebook adding a buy button. Maybe they can place products within a virtual environment, within a game for customers to buy. So there's many different areas to add channels for purchase and to be able to real time find out what are people buying, where are they buying them, and also what are they likely to buy. Big data really helps with those areas in retail.
Now, Rajan, over to you. Clearly some compelling reasons for looking at just these two specific vertical industries to get better data, be more data-driven. The desire must be there. Even the cost efficiencies are more compelling than just a few years or even months ago. What's the hurdle? What prevents them from getting to this goal of proactive and the insights that Dennis just described?
So, one of the main challenges that organizations have is to use the current infrastructure for analytics. The three V's. Velocity, variety, and the volume of data. Serves a few challenges for organizations in terms of how much data can I store, right? And where do I store it, right? And do I have the current infrastructure to do that? Even if I do, the local spin, in a traditional spinning disk versus the new flash arrays, right? So how do you access the data? How fast do you need to access the data is one of the challenges that organizations have. And in addition, there are lots of analytics tools out there. The ecosystem is growing, by the day. There are a few hundred offerings out there, and they all, excellent platforms to use. So the choice of what kind of analytics I would need for the set purpose is a bigger challenge, right? To identify the right tool, the right platform that would serve an organization needs would be one of the challenges. And then the third challenge would be to have the workforce or the expertise to build these analytics, or to even have organizations to even address these challenges from an analytical standpoint is one of the key challenges that organizations might have.
Now, Dennis, as an enterprise architect, you must work with clients there at Rolta AdvizeX who perhaps came at this data issue compartmentalized, if you will. Perhaps marketing did it one way, R&D did it another. Understanding supply chain and internal business operations may have done it a different way. But it seems to me that we need to find more of a general, comprehensive approach to big data analytics that would apply to all of those organizations. Is there some of that going on where people are looking for not just a one-off solution, different for each facet of their company, but perhaps something more comprehensive, general, particularly as we think about more volume coming with the Internet of Things and more data coming in through perhaps more mobile use? How do we get people to think about big data infrastructure rather than big data applications?
You're absolutely right, Dana. There are so many solutions around data analytics and BI and big data and data warehouse. And, many of them work. And our customers, unfortunately, have many, many, many of them. And they've created these silos of information where they really aren't getting the benefits that they had hoped for. And so what we're doing with customers from an enterprise architecture standpoint is looking at the organization holistically. Now, we have a process called Advisor where we work with a company and look at everything they're doing and set a roadmap for the next 3 years to meet their short-term and long-term goals. And what we find when we go to do our interviews with the business people and the IT people at our companies is we find that their goals as an organization are pretty clear because they've been set by the head of the organization, either the CEO or the chief scientist, the chief doctor in healthcare. And they have very clear goals, but the IT is not aligned to those goals, and it's not aligned holistically. There could be, these skunk works that are bringing up some big data initiatives. There could be some corporate sponsored big data, but they're just not organized. And yet all it takes is for us to get the business owners and the IT owners in a room for a few hours to a few days where we can all agree on that single path to meet all needs, to simplify their big data initiatives, but also get the time to value much faster. And so that's been very, very helpful to our customers, is to have an organization like Rolta AdvizeX come in as an impartial third party and facilitate the coming together of business and IT. And in many times as short as a month, have the 3-year strategy that they need to realize the benefits of big data for their organization.
And Dennis, take a moment, if you would, to tell us a little bit more about AdvizeX and Rolta. So for those who might not be familiar with your brand names, they might be understanding the function you've just described, but tell us a bit more about the companies specifically.
Glad to, Dana. So Rolta AdvizeX, we're an international systems integrator. Our U.S. headquarters, as you said, is in Independence, Ohio, just outside of Cleveland. Our international headquarters are in Mumbai, India. And there are, as a systems integrator, we lead with our consultants and our technologists to build solutions for our customers. You know, we don't lead with product, we lead with solutions, we lead with strategy for our customers. And there are 4 areas that we find our customers get the greatest value out of from Rolta AdvizeX. The highest level, it's our advisory services, which I mentioned, which is setting a 3-year roadmap for areas like big data or mobility or cloud. And then the second area is the application side. We have very strong application people at any level for Microsoft, SAP, and Oracle. And so we've been helping customers for years in those areas. The third of the 4 areas is infrastructure. You know, as our customers are looking to simplify and automate their private cloud, as well as to go to public cloud and software as a service, how do you integrate all of that, automate it, and make sure you're meeting your compliance? And the 4th area that's provided a lot of value for our customers is managed services. And that's really, how do I expand my IT organization to a 7x24 organization when I really am not allowed to hire more staff? What if I could have some external resources taking my organization from a single shift to a 3-shift? Managing my IT 7x24, making sure it's secure, making sure it's patched, making sure it's reliable. And those are the 4 areas, major areas that we play in as a systems integrator for our customers.
Great, thanks. Now, Rajan, we heard from Dennis of how to look at this from an enterprise architecture perspective, taking the bigger picture into account, of course. But as a data scientist, I hear frequently now in big data discussions that companies, in this case in healthcare and retail, need to perhaps bring that data scientist function into their organizations more fully, not to put down data analysts or business analysts, but what is it about being a data scientist that is now so important? Why at this point would you want to have data scientists in your organization?
Yep. Oh, yeah. Thanks, Dana. So one of the key functions of a data scientist is to be able to look at data proactively, right? So in a traditional sense, a data analyst's job is reflective, right? They look at transactional data from a traditional manner, which is quite reflective. And bringing in a data scientist or a data scientist function can help you predict, can help you build predictive models on an existing data. So you need a lot of statistical modeling and a lot of the other statistical tools that will help you get there. So this function has been in organizations for a while, but it's more formalized these days, and you need a data scientist in an organization, to perform more of the predictive functions than the traditional reporting functions.
Great. Okay, so we've established that big data is important. It's huge for certain verticals, healthcare and retail among them. Organizations want to get to it fast. They should be thinking generally for the long term. They should be thinking about larger volumes and more velocity, and they need to start thinking as data scientists in order to get out in front of trends rather than reactive to them. So with that, Dennis, what's the role open source when one is thinking about that architecture and that platform as a systems integrator and as a enterprise architect? What's the relationship between going to open source and taking advantage of that, which many organizations I know are doing, but also looking at how to get the best results quickly for the best overall value, overall cost? Where does the rubber hit the road best with open source versus and including commercial?
Thank you, Dana. And that's an excellent question, and one many of our customers have been grappling with, as there are so many fantastic open source big data platforms out there that were written by Yahoo, Facebook, Google for their own use, yet written open source for anyone to use. And I see a little bit of an analogy to Linux back in 1993 when it really started to hit the market, and it was this free alternative to Unix. And customers were embracing it rapidly, trying to figure out how could it fit in, because it had a much different cost model than proprietary Unix. We're seeing that in the open source big data tools as well. Customers have embraced it rapidly. It's free. But just like Linux back there, we're still coming out with the corporate sponsorship, the sort of the red hat that emerged to support the open source world and say, we'll help you, support you, answer your phone calls, hold your hand if you need help. And so now we're seeing, who are going to be the corporate sponsors of some of these open source tools for customers who may not have, thousands of engineers on staff to support open source. That's one thing, is the open source tools have their place. They're very good for storing the reams and reams and terabytes and petabytes and more of data out there, and to search for them almost in a batch manner. Not real-time, as I was speaking about before. Some of our customers are looking for real-time analytics, not just batch, ask a question, I'll get the answer back eventually, which many of the open source big data tools are really meant for that, is how can I store a lot of data inexpensively that I may need access at some point. So what we're seeing is our customers are having this mix of open source big data tools as well as commercial big data tools. In fact, I recently participated in a customer panel where some of the largest .coms talked about what they're doing with open source versus commercial tools. And what they were saying was the open source tools was where they may have stored their data lake, but they were using commercial tools to actually access it real time. Because what they were saying was that if you need real-time access, you need a big data tool that takes data in parallel and also retrieves it in a parallel manner. And the best tools to do that are still in the commercial realm. And so they have this both open source for storage and closed source for retrieval to get that real-time answers that they need to run their business.
Mm. And are there any particular platforms on the commercial side that you're working with, particularly on that streaming, real-time, at volume, at scale equation?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I think what we're seeing on our side with the partners that we work with is, as I said, on the parallel side, HP Vertica is the king of that. Parallel import, parallel query. And so it's extremely, extremely fast to get data in, get data out, as well as it was built on columnar, which is a different way to store data than relational, and it was really meant to get those unexpected queries. Who knows what the query is going to be? Whatever it is, we'll be able to respond to it. And then another very popular platform has been Svp Hana, mostly for our SAP customers who need an in-memory columnar database to get real-time data access to their information. But Rajan works with these tools on a daily basis and can probably provide more detail on that, as well as some of the customer examples that we've had.
Yeah, Rajan, please, if you have some insight into what's working in these verticals and any examples of how organizations are getting their big data payoff, I'd be very, very curious to hear that.
Absolutely. So one of the biggest challenges is to be able to discover the data as in the shortest amount of time. And I mean discovery in the sense that I get data into these systems. I mean, how how soon or how fast can I get some meaningful insights, right? So it works two ways. One is to get the data into the system, aggregate it into your current environment, transform it so that data is harmonious across all the data sources that provide, and then also to provide analytics over that. Now, in a traditional sense, I will collect tons and tons of data. It goes to reams and reams of storage. Now, do I need all those data? Is a question that has to be discovered. So data discovery is becoming a science as we speak, right? So when I get the data, I need to see if this data is useful. If so, how do I process it? So these systems, as Dennis alluded to, Vertica and Svp Hana, enables that data discovery right from the get-go. So customers are, when I get data in, I can just write simple queries. I do not need any new age, or the new form of analytic expertise. I can use traditional SQL querying language to query on these data. Once I have done that, then if I find the data useful, I can send them into storage and do a little bit more robust analytics over that, which can be predictive or in reporting in nature. A few customers that we see, they see a lot of value in data discovery. The whole equation of getting in Hadoop as a data lake is fantastic, and these platforms play very well with the Hadoop technologies out there, right? So once you get a data in these platforms, they provide analytic capabilities that go beyond, above and beyond what a lot of the open source platforms provide. No, I'm not saying that open source platforms don't perform these functions, but there are lots of tools out there that you need to line up in sequence for them to perform what Vertica or Svp Hana will do. The use cases are pretty different, but nevertheless, these platforms actually enable a lot of these functions.
Right, and Rajan, earlier in our discussion, you mentioned the importance of skills and being able to hire enough people to do the job. Is that also an issue in making a decision between an open source and a commercial approach?
Absolutely. So with the open source, there are a lot of code bases out there that needs to be educated and learned. So there is a learning curve, right, within organizations. Traditionally, organizations are more on the reporting function, so they have a lot of the SQL functions within the organization. To retrain them is an organization something that organization would have to think about, and then even to staff for new technologies, something that the organization would have to cater for in the future. So it's something that the organization would have to plan in their roadmap for big data growth.
Mm-hmm. All right, Dennis, looking back at speed to value and getting your big data apparatus up and running, perhaps thinking about it holistically across multiple departments in your organization, anticipating even larger scale over time, that necessitating a path to growth. Tell us a little bit about what's going on in the market with converged infrastructure, where we're looking at very tight integration between hardware and software, between servers that are supporting workloads, usually virtualized, as well as storage, also usually virtualized. For big data, the storage equation is not trivial. It's an integral part of being able to deliver those performance requirements and KPIs. So tell us a bit about why converged infrastructure makes sense and where you're seeing it deployed.
You're absolutely right, Dana. What we're seeing with our customers in 2015 is that they have three options for where to run their applications. They have what we call best of breed, which is what they've done forever, right? They buy servers from someone, some storage from someone, some networking from someone, some software from someone, and they put it together. And it's very time consuming to implement it and support it. They also have the option of going converged, which is buying the entire stack, the server, the storage, the networking, from a single organization who will both factory integrate it, load their software for them. It'll show up, you plug it in, you go. in less than 30 days. The third option is, of course, going to cloud, whether that's infrastructure as a service or software as a service, which can also be quick time to value. Most of our customers now, where they are is there are certain workloads that they're just not ready to run in infrastructure as a service or software as a service, either because of cost reasons or security or compliance reasons. And so for those workloads that they have decided are not ready for software as a service or infrastructure as a service or platform as a service yet, and they need to put something in their own data center, we're seeing about 90% of the time going with converged. And the reason being is, besides the fact that it's easier, it's faster, and it's easier to support, our customers' data centers are getting so much bigger and more complex that they just cannot maintain all of the moving parts, thousands of virtual machines and hundreds of servers, and all the patching needs to happen, and keeping track of interoperability between server A and network B and storage C, that the converged takes that all away from them and just pushes it to the organization that they bought it from. So now they can just focus on their application and their users, which is what they always wanted to focus on, not have to focus on the infrastructure and keeping the infrastructure running. And so converged has really taken off very, very quickly with our customers. I'd say even faster than I would have expected. So either converged, where I'm buying servers and storage and networking separately, but from one company who both pre-installs it at a factory and then maintains it long-term, or hyper-converged, where all of the server and storage and networking is actually done in software on industry standard hardware. But we're seeing, for, as I said, for private cloud, large majority of our customers are going with converged for the pieces that are not going to cloud.
Right, so 90%, that's pretty impressive. I'm curious if that's the rate of adoption for converged. What sort of rate of adoption are you seeing on the hyper-converged side, where it's, as you say, software-defined throughout?
Mm-hmm. What's interesting is that, all of our customers are looking at hyper-converged to figure out where does it fit for them. And the thing about hyper-converged, where it's just a standard, industry standard servers that I'm virtualizing my servers and storage and networking, is where does that fit? Because sometimes it definitely has a much lower entry point. So they'll look at it and say, well, is that right for my tier 1 data center? Maybe I need something that starts bigger and maybe scales bigger in my tier 1 data center. And that hyperconverged maybe is in my tier 2 data center, or possibly in my remote locations, doctor's offices or my remote retail branches. I go with hyperconverged, which is a smaller unit, but also very easy to support, which is great for those remote locations. You also have to think that hyperconverged, although very easy to procure and deploy, when you grow it, you only grow it in one size block. It's like this block that can, let's say, run 200 virtual machines, but when I have to add 200 at a time versus a smaller granularity. So it's important that we spend a lot of time with our customers helping them figure out what is the right, if we've decided that converged is right, what is the right, is it converged or is it hyperconverged for the application? And as I said, it typically breaks down to, for those tier 1 data centers, it's typically converged, but for those tier 2 data centers or those remote locations, it's more likely hyperconverged.
And as, again, putting on your enterprise architect hat, given that we have many times unpredictable loads on that volume and even in the velocity sense for big data, is there a added value and benefit of going converged and perhaps ultimately hyperconverged in terms of adopting to demand, or being fit for purpose, trying to anticipate growth but not have to put too much capital up front and perhaps miss where the hockey puck's going to be type of thinking? What is it about converged and hyperconverged that allow us to perhaps adapt to the Internet of Things trend in healthcare, in retail, where traditional architecture, traditional siloed approaches would maybe handicap us?
You're right, Dana. Some of these workloads, we just don't know how they're going to scale or how quickly. We see that specifically with new applications. maybe we're trying a new channel, possibly a new retail channel. We don't know how it's going to scale. And of course, we don't want to fail by not scaling high enough and turning our customers away. But some of the companies that provide both cloud, hyperconverged, and converged have come up with some great solutions. I'd say two of the most successful solutions for our customers have been something called flexible capacity. And that's where you've decided to go private cloud instead of public for some good reasons, but you wish that your private cloud could scale as rapidly as the public cloud, and also that your payments for your private cloud could scale just like a public cloud could. Typically when customers purchase for a private cloud, they're either doing a traditional capital expense or they just spend the money and they have it, right? And maybe in 3 or 5 years, they spend more. Or they do a lease payment and they have a certain lease payment every month. What we're seeing now is the availability of, as I said, flexible capacity, where I can have more installed in my private cloud than I'm paying for. Let's say there's 100% there, but I'm only paying for 80%. And that way, if there's an unexpected demand for whatever reason, I can turn on another 5, 10, 15, 20% immediately without having to get a PO, which might take 60 days at my organization, place the order, wait 30 days for more to show up, and then meet the demand. Now I can have more on site than I'm paying for, and when I need it, I just turn it on and I pay a bill, just like I would if I was at some cloud provider. That's the one side, what we call flexible capacity. On the second side is the ability to do cloud bursting. So let's say I'm okay with public cloud for certain application workloads, infrastructure as a service, for example. But what I found is I have a very efficient private cloud, and I can actually run much more cost effectively in my private cloud than I can in public. But I'm okay with public cloud. Well, if a burst comes, I can actually extend my application across private and public to take on this new workload. And then I can place the order, wait for the new backing equipment to show up, maybe it's 30 days. When it shows up, I set it up, I expand my on-site capability, and then I just turn off the public cloud. Because the most expensive use of public cloud many times is just turning it on and never turning it off. It's really most cost-effective for short-term utilization, whether it's new applications or development or DR. Those we see are most effective for cost reasons, the use of public cloud.
Yeah, well, thanks for that. Now, Rajan, back to you. As a data scientist, you're probably more concerned with what the systems are doing than how they're doing it. But is there a benefit from your perspective of going with converged infrastructure or hyperconverged infrastructure solutions where, as a data scientist, whether it's bursting, whether it's reacting to a market demand within your organization, perhaps, what is it about converged infrastructure that's attractive for you as a data scientist?
Sure. So one of the biggest challenges would be to have a system that will allow an organization to go to market at the soonest. Right. So with a big data platform, there are lots of moving parts in terms of network and traditional Hadoop technology and all the things. There are like 3 copies of every data, and you need to scale that across various systems so that you have a high availability. And a big data organizations that are engaging big data are looking at high availability as one of the key requirements, which means that anytime a node goes down, you need to have the data available for analysis and query. Right? From a data scientist standpoint, stability or the availability of data is a key requirement. For the data scientists, when they build their models and analytic views, they are churning through tons and tons of data. It requires tremendous horsepower, system horsepower, and also network capabilities that pulls data from various sources. With a converged infrastructure, you get that advantage, right? So everything is in a single box. You have it just out there, and it's very scalable, and for a data scientist, it's like a dream come true for their analytic needs.
All right. Well, I'm afraid we're coming up towards the end of our time. Let's look at metrics of success. How do you know you're doing this well. Do you have any examples, either Dennis or Rajan, of organizations that have thought about their platform, their right relationship between commercial and open source, that have examined their options on deployment models, including converged and hyperconverged? And what is it they get back? How would you know that you're doing this right? Any thoughts about these business or technology metrics of success?
This is Dennis. I have a quick one that I see all the time, and our customers today measure how long it takes to get a new business application out the door. And I'd say almost every one of our customers has a measurement around that. How quickly can we get a business application out the door and functional so that we can act upon it? And most of the time, it can be 3 months, 6 months. Yet they really want to get these new applications out the door, in a week. Just constant improvement to their applications to help either their patients or to help their customers out or get into new channels. And so what we're finding is they already have a metric that says, all right, today it takes us 3 months to get a new application out the door. All right, let's change that. Let's really look at the way we're doing things, people, process, and IT, end to end, typically with our help through something like an advisor. And let's look at all the pieces of the process, look at it all from an ITIL standpoint or an ITSM standpoint, and say, how can we improve the process? And then let's implement the solution, and then let's measure it. Let's have constant improvement to take that 3 month down to 1 month, down to possibly 1 week if it's a standardized enough application. So for me, from a business standpoint, it's the fastest time to value for new applications, new research. How quickly can I get those out the door better than I'm doing today?
It almost sounds
from a technical standpoint, is how much data I can aggregate at the fastest. There are tons of data sources out there. The biggest challenge would be to integrate all that, in the fastest amount of time and make sure that value is realized at the soonest. Right. So with the given platforms, any platform that allows for that would definitely serve the purpose for the analytic needs.
Listening to you both, it almost sounds as if you are taking what you can do with big data analytics and applying it to how you do big data analytics. Is there some of that going on?
Absolutely. It's interesting when we do when we go out and meet with customers, when we do workshops and gather data from our customers, even when we do advisors and we capture data from our customers, we use that. We take all identifying customer information out of it, but we use that to help our customers out by saying, of the 2,000 customers that we do business with every year, this is what we're seeing at these other customers. This is where we've seen them be successful. And we use that data to be able to help our customers be more successful faster.
Well, great. I'm afraid we'll have to leave it there. We've been learning about how Rolta AdvizeX in Ohio is creating analytics-driven solutions in the healthcare and retail industries. And we've heard how the right balance between open source and commercial IT products helps in creating a big data capability for the long term. And we've also explored how converged infrastructure and hyper-converged infrastructure solutions are hastening the path to big data business value. So please join me in thanking our guests. We've been here with Dennis Fauché, Enterprise Architect at Rolta AdvizeX. Thank you, Dennis.
Thank you, Dana. It was our pleasure.
And we've also been joined by Rajan Narayanan. He's a data scientist. They are also at Rolta AdvizeX. Thank you, Rajan.
Thank you, Dana. I appreciate it.
And a big thank you, too, to our audience for joining us for this Big Data Innovation Case Study discussion. I'm Dana Gardner, Principal Analyst at Inter Arbor Solutions, your host for this ongoing series of HP-sponsored discussions. Thanks again for joining, and come back next time.